Okay, chapter 3. Yes, the first question is, analyze the main elements of whole life asset management, providing examples as appropriate. You remember we answered a question like this in chapter 1, where we looked at the pre-acquisition stage or element, yes, of whole life asset management or whole life cycle costing. The elements include pre-acquisition cost, acquisition cost, maintenance. We can even look at disposal, quality. We can look at even training. So in chapter 3, you see the elements there. The elements, training. These are all part of the whole life asset management. And you need to provide examples. Even insurance. Insurance is also an element of whole life asset management. These are the factors you need to consider when doing whole life cycle or asset management. So please take note. What we need you to do is to add more flesh. Add more flesh. In the exams, you have to write a lot to impress the examiner. We value detailed submissions. Just that it shouldn't be too much. It should be within reasonable range. Now, question 2. Explain the difference between purchase price and whole life management cost, illustrating with examples and cost elements. So what's the difference between purchase price and whole life management cost? See, we can use the price iceberg. Let me see if I can get it online. So that's the price iceberg. Price. So this is the price cost iceberg. I don't know if you can all see. Please, can you see?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can see.
Okay. That's the price cost iceberg. So you see the price. The price is the only visible element. The others, inventory, inspection, handling, training, consumer support, delivery, delay, these all have cost implications. We need to consider all, including price. And even with this, you see defect work, training cost, delivery, inspection cost, rework, replacement cost, scrap cost, which is disposal, cost of field failure, warranty cost. These are all part of the elements, or they are all elements of the whole life assets management or whole life cost. Okay, so when we talk about purchase price is just one element of the, the item, which looks at how much they are supposed to pay to acquire the item. That's the purchase price. But the whole life management cost does not look at only price. It looks at all the costs that we considered beneath the iceberg. So we are looking at insurance, we are looking at quality, we are looking at disposal cost, we are looking at even pre-acquisition cost, which is not captured in the iceberg, but in broad terms, you have to look at the pre-acquisition cost, the acquisition cost, training cost, and even the commission. We are all part. We need to look at all these when we are doing whole life management cost. So you can use the iceberg to explain the difference. Price is what is shown, and whole life management cost include price and all the hidden costs. Okay. So then we can look at question 3. Says assess the contribution of whole life asset management to an organization's supply chain. So whole life asset management, how important is it? Yes, it helps as it supports sustainability, because it's sustainability that will consider the product from cradle to its grave. So we are concerned about how the product will be disposed of. So even looking at the environmental impact of whatever you are producing or whatever you are buying. So when buying, you don't only consider the price, you consider whether that product you are buying will not give you any disposal problem. Okay. And once you start thinking along that line, you are thinking environmental sustainability. So whole life asset management supports sustainability, which is a widely acceptable concept or activity. Okay. And a source of competitive advantage for most organizations. So whole life asset management can support an organization in this way. Then another contribution is that it helps organizations to save costs. Yes, you may have two suppliers, one offering a very good price, 50,000 Ghana cedis, and the other offering 80,000 Ghana cedis. There is a difference. Yes, maybe. Sorry, there is a difference. The difference here is that the one offering 50,000 Ghana cedis, the 50,000 Ghana cedis does not include training. Training will have to be paid for. If it is an asset that you are buying, you have to pay for training. And even the 50,000 is just for illustrative purposes, because whole life assets or whole life cycle are usually used for high value items. So it will be $1 million item or $1 million Ghana cedi worth of an item. So a supplier may not be giving you, the 50,000 may not include training. When it comes to disposal, you have to think of how to dispose it yourself. But the one who is giving you, who is taking 80,000, will train your people, will be doing maintenance for you. When it comes to disposal, they have reverse logistics. They will take it back. They even have what we call trade-in. You can give it to them, you top it up, and a new one will be given to you. Okay, so the supplier giving you 80,000 is offering you all this. but there's another giving you 50,000. So if you just look at the price that this person is giving, supplier B is giving 8 or is mentioning 8, and A is mentioning 50. So let's go for the 50. You may be making a very big mistake because the 50 does not come with all the things that the 80 comes with. That is the difference. So when you go for the 80,000, means you are applying a whole life cost, to your purchasing decision. That is what it means. And so at the end of the day, you are able to save a lot of money because the 50,000, the one giving you the 50,000, if that person is to train you, may pay 10,000 for training. When it comes to maintenance, you may pay 20,000. When it comes to disposal, you may incur cost of, let's say, 15,000 and all that. And when you put all these together, and even insurance and other elements, you may end up paying even 120,000 Ghana cedis. That's the cost you would incur if you only look at the price. You may later incur cost of 120,000 Ghana cedis. But if you had bought from the supplier offering 80,000 cedis, you would have saved about 4,000 or 40,000 Ghana cedis in future. You see, so that's the difference. So when we talk about whole life asset management, helping organizations to save cost, it's very important. And it also supports cross-functional collaboration because whole life asset management cannot be done by just one institute or department. It requires a cross-functional approach to purchase to acquiring assets. So let's take note. Oh, Joshua, your network. All right. Then evaluate 5 hidden costs associated with global sourcing and the extended supply chain. So one hidden cost, remember, we looked at culture. Culture is one. We also looked at even tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Yes, they are all hidden costs. We can also talk of even language barriers. They all manifest themselves in one way or the other, in terms of cost.
The type of market.
Yes, the type of markets and even logistics.
Type of economy.
Yes, logistics capability, complexities. Yes, So the type of market, I think, all falls under the culture and the economic condition of the country from which you are buying. So these are all very important considerations that you want to look at. Okay. So that's good. And 5 should be, you have a lot in the book. I think trade wars and other, yet Ofstet's cultural model I mentioned. You see, one thing I advise is that make sure you prepare adequately for this paper. But when you get the questions, you should kill the questions. You should measure the questions. Yes.
So give us all the answers.
Pardon?
So give us all the answers.
Oh, yes. So that's why I'm giving you all the answers so that you can add more. I suggest you even take a few questions. Maybe you can take one chapter 1 question, one chapter 2, one question from chapter 3, one question from chapter 4, and answer them to the best of your ability and send it so that I will review.
Oh, great. You know something? I will answer everything and send it to you.
Good. If you're able to do that,
can you get the L4, the tray to M32?
Yes, the L4M8. Yes, you can get the questions. Haven't I? I think I sent it to.
No, then I haven't received it.
I sent it to on Instagram. Sorry, on Telegram.
Okay. Then.
It's on Telegram, so you can access it there. Okay. So after this, I will send this one to you.
Okay.
So try and answer them, and it will prepare you adequately. Okay. So then we can look at question 5. Using an appropriate theory, examine the influence of culture in a global supply chain. In a global supply chain. So that is where we have Giet Hofstede's cultural model. We mentioned culture as one of the elements of or hidden cost in global source. We looked at that. Okay. So that is it. Giet Hofstede. So we have the masculinity and femininity. We have the power distance. We have uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance. There is long-term orientation and short-term orientation. There is femininity, and I think I've mentioned femininity and masculinity. I think about 5. Then indulgence and abstinence. So these are the models. These are the cultural dimensions proposed by Giet Hofstede. Giet Hofstede isn't dead; he's a psychologist. He's still alive. He's still alive. So you can use your Giet Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Okay, then but I can say they are unlikely to ask you a question like this. They would rather do that. Yes, but it's possible. It's possible because this is the boss battle. It's possible, and if you've written negotiation, this would be a very good opportunity to understand the cultural dimensions. Then question 6. Evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of leasing compared to outright purchase. So we will look at the advantages of outright purchase and disadvantages of outright purchase. The disadvantages for outright purchase would be the advantages for lease, and the advantages for outright purchase would be the disadvantages for lease. Okay, so when we do outright purchase gives you control over the assets. When you do outright purchase, it's your own, and so you have full control over the assets. You pay the full amount and you get it. You have full control. You can do with it whatever you want to do with it. But the disadvantage here is the initial capital requirement. That is if you need it for a very short period. You are just using it for a short period, after which you would have no use for it. Then it becomes a disadvantage. But if it is something that you'll be using all the time, then it makes sense buying it than leasing it. Buying it than leasing it. Okay. Then we can look at another advantage, which is for capital allowance. One advantage of doing outright purchase is that when you buy, you pay the full amount to acquire the asset or the item. You can benefit from capital allowance. And Ghana Revenue Authority does that. If you read the Act, the Ghana Revenue Authorities Act, there is a portion that makes provision for capital allowance, and you have to own the assets to make you eligible for capital allowance. It's just like tax exemption on your assets, as an organization. So, but if you can't prove the asset is yours, you cannot benefit from capital allowance. You can't. Okay, and another one disadvantage also is that whilst the assets remains with you, and you having full control of the assets, you'll be doing the maintenance. You do the maintenance yourself. So all the costs associated with maintaining the assets will be borne by you. That's a disadvantage. That's it. And one advantage also for outright purchase is that when the asset gets to its end of life, at least you can sell it for a residual value. It's like scrap. When you sell your car to scrap, you can imagine the money you get. You can get some money. Maybe a car gets involved in an accident, and it gets destroyed. At least some of the parts can be salvaged. You can sell it for some money because it's yours. It's yours. But if you leased it or you lease the asset, you can't sell it. It's the owner that can sell it or can scrap it for that residual value. Okay, so these are some of the advantages and disadvantages. And for lease, yes, for lease you don't need a huge sum of money to lease an item. You just need the lease price, the lease amount. That's all you need. So if leasing it for a month is 50 cedis or 100 cedis, that's what you pay. You don't pay the full value of the asset or the item you are buying. So in the short term, leasing will be very beneficial. The initial capital requirement is low. It's low. And the disadvantage is that you don't have full control. Yes, you don't have full control because it's not yours. So if you want to change certain things, you have to seek the consent of the owner before you can. It's just like leasing a building. If you want to change any part of it, the owner of the building must know what you want to do. Then that's a disadvantage. And when it comes to leasing, another advantage is that depending on the nature of the contract you have with the lessor, you may not maintain or be responsible for the maintenance of the machine. Most organizations lease printers, and there are companies that lease their printers. We only pay for the number of sheets printed. And I think there is also a lease price that you pay. That's all. They will do the maintenance of the printer and all that. They will be doing it. So that's so beneficial when you lease. And the disadvantage is that capital allowance, you can't get capital allowance because it's not yours. So you will still have to pay taxes on those assets. That is it. Okay. If you have any other advantage for leasing, yes, when it comes to leasing, also one advantage is that it can be version controlled. When it's out of date, when the asset is out of date, you can just give it to the lessor, and they will have to now bear the burden of getting a new one or updated version. they will have to get an updated version, and not you. But if you do outright purchase and it gets obsolete or it becomes out of date, you have to take another money to do the renewal or get the latest version so that you can still operate. But if you lease it, it's the leaseor's duty to do that or to do the replacement or the update. Okay, that is it. Then we can look at the role of senior management and cross-functional teams to whole life asset management. And we mentioned that whole life asset management isn't an exclusive preserve. The exercise isn't an exclusive preserve for any particular department like procurement. No. We need other functional areas. Marketing, finance, engineering, they must all be part because we are dealing with a high value capital requirement or capital asset. So what's the role of senior management? Senior management gives approval. Theirs is to give the authority approval and support. Okay, and this comes following a business case properly developed to convince top management that adopting whole life asset management is the way to go. And that is going to deliver A, B, and C benefits. Okay. And we do same for the capital requirements, that we need this capital requirement or the capital asset to be able to deliver certain, outputs within the organization. So we are dealing with capital assets. So senior management will have to give their support, their buy-in in terms of finance. They have to support it financially, emotionally, morally. And the cross-functional team, they will be in charge of the whole life asset management. In L4M8, we'll look at it as a project. It's a project. Whole life asset management is a project. And it requires just the same project management tools as a typical project management. Okay, so when it comes to monitoring, when it comes to the use of Gantt charts to monitor progress in the development of specification for whole life assets, all these come in. Cross-functional team, we know the input they bring on board. Procurement is looking at cost. Finance is looking at the budget. Marketing is looking at the product appeal to the customers. Engineering is looking at the design and all that. These all bring their unique expertise on board to enhance the quality of the whole life asset project or management project. So that's their contribution. And we also looked at the Belbin's team roles, the thought-oriented team members, the action-oriented team members, and the people-oriented team members. They all have their unique competence. They are those who bring or who are good at finishing the project. They are for the completer and the finisher. There is the chairman or the coordinator. There is the plant, and so many team roles, and they all, add value to the project. The 8, explain 5 factors that an organization has to consider in order to ensure effective disposal. Now, you would see this in, I think, chapter 3. Yes, chapter 3. Yes, when it comes to effective disposal, you are looking at the legislation. You consider the legislation because you cannot just dispose of assets. In some jurisdictions, you have to get license to be able to dispose of. You have to get license before you can dispose of certain waste. Then even the reputation. Reputation is also one of the things. Your reputation, you would want to consider your reputation when disposing of assets. If you don't dispose it well, you'll be perceived as an environmentally poor performer, and that can affect your reputation. So you may want to do the right thing. Then the transport method. That is here if you already have the supplier who supplied the asset has a reverse logistic capability, then there may be an arrangement for them to come and pick it up, and they will bear the transportation cost. Or you will have to bear the transportation cost if you have to have the asset delivered to the manufacturer. You have to consider, and even the disposal risk must also be considered, and environmental impact. All these are the factors, and I think you may get it on page 181. Yes, page 181. You have it there. You kindly take note. Question 8. The factors that an organization has to consider in order to ensure effective disclosure. Then explain the differences between primary and secondary data. And here, after explaining the difference, you can give examples. So primary data is data from source or data at source. So from the author's own mouth, when you go to the malls and you see the price tag, it's a primary data. It's right from the source. It's primary data. And trade data or information about prices you get from, suppliers at trade fairs and exhibitions. It's also primary data, right from the source. Websites, and government or statistics data or statistical data. Statistical data is secondary because it may have been gathered for some other purpose, but now you need it for something else. So it's secondary source of data. Then website, supplier's website is not real time. Supplier's website. Have you ever experienced a situation where you went to the supplier's website, you check the prices, and when you engage the supplier gave you a different price? It's possible that the prices on the supplier's website may not have been updated. So when you engage the supplier will give you the right price. It's possible. Okay. So websites cannot be seen as primary data. No, it's not primary. It's secondary. So that is it. And you can get a lot of examples of primary data and even secondary data like these economic times. You can get a lot of economic information in the Financial Times. It's a secondary data. And searchable or information or economic analysis by economists online in the form of searchable database. When you enter, maybe economic analysis made by a particular economist or like a think tank. It's been there for long. You can get access to it. It's secondary data. can use it for the purpose for which you want to use it. Okay. Then we can look at the next question, which is assess the role of regulations regarding waste money. Regulation regarding waste money. And regulations play an important role in waste management. And one would be the EPA Act. The EPA Act is a very important regulation, and it regulates the environmental aspects of organizations. There is the Extended Responsibility or Extended Producer Responsibility Act. It's global. It's global. So when we talk about extended producer responsibility, it means that the producer should not only consider producing an item for money, but must also consider the impact of the asset or the item he's producing on the environment and take measures, proactive measures, to ensure that the disposal stage or the end of the life of the asset is properly managed. This informs the specification of the product in question. So instead of using products that cannot be recycled, you consider products that can be recycled, because the extended producer responsibility requires that you are responsible for the end of life of the asset. So why don't you consider green inputs? Why don't you consider using recyclable materials so that at the end of life of the asset or the item, you can collect them and recycle them for something else? And it's a regulation. And we have the we. That is the waste, electrical and electronic, regulation. So it's for those in the electronic and electrical markets. Yes. Theirs is to ensure that they minimize their impact on the environment in terms of managing waste related to electrical and electronic items. Then regulations in some jurisdictions, I think the UK, they have the landfill tax. The landfill tax. Yes, and the landfill tax rewards those who minimize their waste to landfill and punishes those who increase their waste to landfill. So that you pay more if you bring more waste to the landfill, and you pay less if you bring less waste to the landfill. So you may want to even consider waste segregation at home, so that you put only plastic in one bin, then food waste in another bin, so that you can minimize your waste to landfill. So plastic waste will be collected by other people for recycling. Food waste, even with the food waste, there is a way it is treated and fed to a biodigester or a biogas digester, and it generates gas for you. So nothing goes to the landfill, and you don't pay tax, any taxes. So this is the rule of regulation. Yes, regarding waste management. Then, so you see, if you are giving examples, it tells the examiner that you understand what they are talking about, and they cannot withhold the mark. They will give it to you. Then assess, okay, list and explain the main stages for an organization attempting to decommission its fixed asset as part of its whole life asset management. So here, usually I don't even talk when it comes to decommissioning because the processes are so clear in the book. Yes, the preparation, dismantling, processing, and disposal. On page 175, it's so clear. So clear. So the stages, the preparation. Start with preparation, then with dismantling, then the processing and disposal. At least have 2 or 3 activities done at each stage. Okay. All right, so we can look at the last chapter. There we have only 14 questions. We'll finish right now. Okay. Question 1 of chapter 4. Explain 5 implications of implementing ethical and responsible procurement for an organization and its procurement activities. Explain 5 implications of implementing ethical and responsible procurement for an organization and its procurement activities. So we'll look at a few implications. Now, when we talk about ethical and responsible procurement, we are talking about issues of fraud. We're talking about conflict of interest, corruption, environmental sustainability, social sustainability. We are looking at human rights, amongst others. What are the implications for implementing ethical and responsible procurement? There are implications for top management. There are implications for buyers. There are implications for supply chain. So for buyers, the implication will be in supply selection and even specification development. When implementing ethical and responsible procurement, we may want to ensure that we pre-qualify our suppliers and assessing their performance in these areas using pre-qualification questionnaires. Are they members of ETI? Do they have environmental management standards or systems? Do they subscribe to ILO's core principles? These are some of the questions that we may ask. When we do that, we are incorporating ethical and responsible procurement into our supplier selection. And as part of the implementation, you must do it. When you are developing specification, you would want to ensure that when you are developing specification, you would want to ensure that the specification is so good that even small, medium enterprises can also pay. Okay, they are not left out. So it has implication for specification development also for buyers. Then there is implication for senior management, because when you are implementing ethical and responsible procurement, you need top management support. So they have to develop competency framework when even employing procurement persons or procurement professionals. They have to develop competency framework to include ethical and responsible procurement. So that if you are employed as a procurement manager in the organization, you won't be buying from suppliers who are not ethical and responsible. So that's what top management can do. Top management will also have to provide support to the implementation of ethical and responsible procurement. Then there is implication for policy development, because if that is the implication for suppliers, that is where you develop code of conduct for suppliers when you are implementing ethical and responsible procurement. Code of conduct, like this company, Apple. Yes, they developed some code of conduct for Foxconn in China, responsible for the final assembly of all Apple products. Foxconn, they developed it for them. See, it's part of the implementation. So one of the implications is policy implications. So you have to develop policy, and code of conduct is a policy prescribing how you want suppliers or the suppliers to behave in the supply chain. That is another implication of supply chain. And one implication for implementing ethical and responsible sourcing or procurement is it has technological implications. And when we talk about technological implications, we are looking at the use of softwares like cognitive supply chain 360 or supply chain mapping tools. And these systems or these softwares allows you to monitor events in your supply chain, so that if a supplier is behaving unethically or using children to produce, the supply chain mapping or the cognitive supply chain 360 will give you information about those unethical suppliers within your chain. And these are usually managed by third parties. Yours is just to have someone sit behind the computer and take reports. But the software provider is the one going to do all the works, the background check, and feed you with that information. If there is any supply in the supply chain not doing the right thing, these software operators will give you feedback. Okay. And there is also implication for audit. So you see, mentioned 5, but we've spoken about more than 5. There are implications for audit. So you need to audit the supply chain or your suppliers to identify areas of infringement. Once the code of conduct is given to them, you conduct audit to ensure that they do the right thing. And where gaps are identified, corrective action plans are developed to ensure that they do the right thing. So when we talk about the implications for implementing ethical and responsible procurement, it's plenty. We haven't even finished. Then question 2, discuss how the responsible use of power might be used by procurement to promote sustainability in supply chains. When we talk about power, we have legitimate power. Legitimate power is power, wielded by virtue of the position you occupy within the organization. So if you are the manager in your organization, the power you wield there at that level is your legitimate power, the authority. Then there is reward power. Reward power. Now, reward power is the power you have by virtue of your ability to offer rewards. Okay, so a buying organization has reward power if the contract it's inviting suppliers to bid for is so lucrative and suppliers really need that contract. It is in this situation we can say that you have a reward power because suppliers want the contract. And because they need the contract, there is nothing you can tell them or you will tell them to do, they will not do. They will do it. So power helps you to, influence suppliers positively. And here the responsible use of power is not to punish suppliers for wrongdoing, but to encourage them to do the right thing. And you can use reward power. Okay, if you want the contract, then be a member of ETI or get ISO 9001 or ISO 14001 management standard. And you'll be eligible to bid. You see, they will do it because usually your contracts are so huge. And once they get it, it's a life-changing contract for some organizations. So once they know you have the reward power, they will do everything to make sure they get a contract. And that is where you can use your power responsibly by getting them to do the right things or behaving ethically in the supply chain. You can also use legitimate power. And legitimate power is the position you will within the supply chain. So Apple is Apple, we know, but we don't know all Apple supply chain members. But we know they get some of their, cobalt from DR Congo and all that. They have very complex supply chain. But it's Apple. Apple is the face we know. They will have the legitimate power to influence the behavior of their supply chain partners. So they can say that all their suppliers or their supply chain partners, you have to do this, you have to do that. Otherwise, we won't do business with you. And you see, once they do that, what they are in this, once they issue that threat, they are no more using legitimate power, but they are using coercive power. For coercive power, so punishment. Okay, but legitimate power requires that you support them. You have the position to get them to do the right thing. When you ask them to do it, they will do it. I don't know a company where the CEO will tell the managers or ask them to do something and they refuse. Hey, you will do it. Naturally, you will do it because of the respect you have for the CEO. You will do it. So using that position in the supply chain will also get suppliers within the chain to do the right thing without issuing threat. Once you do that, it's coercive power. And then there is also expert power. Expert power. Expert power. And expert power, here, the power you wield is purely based on your expertise. You are not challenged on anything you say because you are the subject matter expert. When you say A, B, and C, about 99% of those listening will not challenge you on that. You have that power. So using this power responsibly means that the supply chain members who have more knowledge or expertise in ethical and responsible business can use this expertise to educate those other members within the chain who are ignorant or not aware of these ethical and responsible behavior. So Apple, for instance, can use their knowledge of ethical and responsible business or business to educate the other members of the supply chain and develop or provide support. And today, there are webness. You can have Zoom meetings with suppliers. You can have webness. There are so many webness, and suppliers can have access to them. You are using your expert power to influence your supply chain members positively. Then there is the reference power. Reference power. Or reference, that's the reference power. With that, you have the respect of your supply chain members. They revere you. They respect you because of your reputation. You are very reputable. And every organization may want to associate with a reputable organization. So they will listen to you when you talk or when you instruct them because of the respect. If anyone respects you and revere you when you talk, they listen. Dr. Mensah Tabo and a lot of figures, public figures, there are some people when they are talking, you listen to them, you take it, and, work with it. So if your supply chain members see you as a reputable organization, they are more likely to listen to you when you talk and also make themselves amenable or available for change. Okay, so when you do this, you are using your power responsibly. But when you threaten suppliers, if you do not terminate a relationship or a contract, yes, that one is something that you do last. That will be the last resort. If you do that, you are not using your power responsibly. And the same person can wield all this power. The same person can have legitimate power, can have reference power, can have expert power, can have, coercive power. Just mentioned that the same organization can have all these sources of personal power. Question 3A. Analyze 4 possible risks that an organization is likely to experience within its supply chain. So just 3 ways in which these fraud risks could be mitigated or managed. The first thing is that we need to, and here, please, your introduction will always be important. The introduction. Question 1, 5 implications of implementing ethical and responsible procurement. Your introduction should be about ethical and responsible procurement, what it is. Before you move on to answer the question, we talk about responsible use of power. Define power. What is power? The types of power, and how these sources of power can be used responsibly in the supply chain. Then 3A, analyze 4 possible fraud risks. What is risk or what is fraud? Okay, what is fraud? And when we talk about fraud, we are looking at using or we are looking at acts of deception meant to secure some financial gain. So you deceive to get money. And it even extends to stealing. Yes, to stealing. So there are different types of fraud. There is online fraud. Online fraud is online fraud. Yes, there is, it can even be these Bitcoin, there are fraudulent people online. If you don't, hello.
I said, oh yeah, that one is too bad.
I know someone who lost about 50,000. A friend.
Hey.
Yes, 50,000. One day he went to the website and the website was just blank. Nothing. He could not even issue any command on the website. It's off, and that was he couldn't do anything. You see, that's online fraud. You see, but others will also say, "Oh, Bitcoin is still working, it's still moving on," and all that. But some have lost a lot of money. Then we can also talk of, phishing or corporate identity theft. It's also fraud. Corporate identity theft. And corporate identity theft or phishing means that the organization is using the identity of another organization. So when you deal with them, you are dealing with the wrong people. They are imposters. They are not the real organization, like DHL. And so we are from DHL, we've received from goods. That's phishing, corporate identity theft. It's fraud. Then even cyber crime. Yes. Cybercrime. And even there are types of fraud that take place even within an organization. They call it, I think corporate fraud. Yes, there are organizations that there are fraudsters that target only big organizations like Bank of Ghana, like big companies. Call it corporate fraud. And they use technology to do that. Okay, so these are some of the types of fraud. And how can we mitigate these fraud? Okay, corporate identity theft, for example. We talk about corporate identity theft. We can, do due diligence. And you do proper due diligence and ask the right questions. You will know that you are dealing with the wrong organization. You know that this organization is not a real job. Then when we talk of online fraud, we can mitigate and manage this risk by getting or using experts who are, well versed in fraud, online fraud, to manage online transactions. Yes. So training in online fraud could help anyone, so that if you are doing any online transaction, you would be very much aware of these. When you see the signs, you know that there's fraud. You can easily identify fraud in that area. Then when we talk of there is also money mulling, which is also one type of fraud. And we should also note the causes of fraud is because of some financial gain that the fraudster will get. And even in an organization, people will steal because the money paid to them at the end of the month is nothing to write home about. Living wages are not paid and all that. So as part of the introduction, you can mention the reason why people engage in fraud before looking at the types of fraud. Okay. All right. Then we can look at, so we are done with the management. Done with the management. Then we can look at question 4. Explain 5 areas which will be addressed by the quiz. This is a very examinable area. Those who wrote last year, they had this question. And Cips is very serious about its code of ethics. So we better master them. They may repeat it. And you can have this question with another sub-question. So please take note. The code of conduct or the code of ethics, the 5 areas. We did that in our last, I think, the meeting before our last 2 meetings. So please, the code of ethics, I bet, master them. Then question 5. Assess 5 ethical issues that have to be considered in order to promote sustainability within an organization's supply chain. So 5 ethical issues. So we talk about ethical issues. We can use ethical trade initiatives basically alone, including the payment of living wages, or living wages must be paid. We can also talk about avoidance of the use of child labor. We can also talk about even fraud. Fraud is also ethical issue. If we consider this in the context of ethical and responsible sourcing, then we are looking at human rights, we are looking at fraud, we are looking at and child labor all falls under human rights. The living wages and all that, they all fall under human rights. Then we can talk of corruption, we can talk of bribery. These are all ethical issues that have to be considered in order to promote sustainability within an organization's supply chain. Okay. These are all ethical issues. Human rights and human rights captures living wages, workers' rights. Workers' rights fall under human rights. That's where you have labor, child labor, no use of child labor. Workers must be, must have the freedom to choose their employment. They have to have the freedom to join associations. They have to, they shouldn't suffer any discrimination at the workplace. They have to work under safe and hygienic working environment or condition. Regular employment. These are all workers' rights. And so very important. I talk about assessing 5 ethical issues: peace, human rights, fraud, corruption, bribery, conflict of interest. These are all ethical issues. Then question 6, evaluate the action. Yes, I highlighted this because it's not examinable. It's not even part. We added it and just took it off. I think this is not the edited version. Okay, so we are moving to question 7. Propose 5 measures that an organization take to reduce the likelihood of unethical behavior in supply chains in order to protect its reputation. So all that I've said, I want you to tell us measures that an organization can take to reduce the likelihood of unethical behavior in supply chains. What can you do to ensure that
there should be more of checks?
Yes, check and balances or checks and balances. Very important. So, code of conduct.
One thing that my company does, I don't know how to categorize it under any of the examples, but they're giving opportunity for people to report when there's any sign of corruption or any fraudulent acts.
I think it's whistleblowing.
Yeah, whistleblowing. Is it under that one?
Yes. It's also in the book. It's whistleblowing. It's under ethics. You can blow the whistle, and your name will not be mentioned. That you give the alarm or the information. And I think ECG also takes some a few months ago, and that was last year. You can report any one you know in your area using illegal or doing illegal connection, or we may have done illegal connection. If you know someone like that, you can just report. When they come and arrest the person, any money they take from the person, you are entitled to a certain percentage. And they were doing that to encourage people. But Ghana, I've forgotten, but there's an amount that they will give you, a very lucrative one. So, but Ghana, sometimes, some way, somehow, someone will get to know that you gave the pillar. It's interesting.
And people are not even motivated to do anything about illegal connections now.
Yes. It's true. So that is it. So, like you are saying,
but just find out the first answer I gave, that's the checks and balances.
Yes, then you are talking about you are talking about code of ethics or code of conduct and audits. They are all under checks and balances.
Oh, okay.
Code of ethics or code of conduct, and but one thing we should notice that sometimes you may give 1 point, and that point captures. Once you give that point, you cannot. You are stuck. You can't give any other point. So when that happens, you just put that one aside and start thinking of sub points. Okay. So like the check and balances, instead of saying let's say check and balance, you can say we develop codes, and you can for suppliers you can conduct audits. You have 2 points here, but the check and balance is only 1 point. So sometimes it's that's how it works, and then you get more points. Okay, then yes, and due diligence will also do. Yes, due diligence. The Transparency International Corruption Perception Index can help you gauge the level of corruption in that particular country. And if we know that, if like, just imagine Ghana bidding for a contract, a supplier in Ghana bidding for a contract in UK. They know our corruption perception index is high, so we are likely, suppliers here in Ghana or Nigeria are more likely to influence the outcome of the bid. They would want to pay money so that they can get a contract because they know the corruption level here in Ghana or in Africa is so high. So they may not even want to deal with us. So due diligence will also be very important, apart from the audit and development of code of conduct. And also supplier selection. Yes, pre-qualification. We can pre-qualify suppliers to minimize the risk. When you pre-qualify them, that's where you get to know if they are members of PTI, they subscribe to ILO principles, or they have the social accountability 8,000 certification and all that. If you discover they don't have, you may want to assist them to have it. If it doesn't work out, then it means they can't bid. Yes, we can't select them. invite them to bid. So these are some of the things that you may want to do to reduce the likelihood of unethical behavior in supply chains. And we can also do what we call supply development, and that becomes a remedy. Okay, that is when an audit has been conducted and adverse reports given or findings, provided. Then you can develop a supplier, you can create awareness. Yes, even awareness creation through webinars can help. You can create awareness or check the awareness of the existence of ethical standards, or check the supplier's awareness of the existence of ethical standards in the supply chain. The supplier may not even know that there is ETI, something like ETI, or even IM. They don't know. So if you're able to check that, it will help. Okay. Supply development will also help. Then assess how ethical sourcing can reduce the vulnerability of global supply chains. This is what when we talk about ethical sourcing, it's all about what you've mentioned. It can reduce vulnerability. Vulnerability is risk. When we talk about risk, reputational risk, compliance risk. We can talk of even operational risk. We can even talk of fraud risk. Yes, fraud risk. That was the question we answered. Fraud is also risk. These are all types of risk. And when you develop ethical sourcing, you can avoid all this or reduce vulnerability. The how is what you will do in ethical sourcing to reduce these vulnerabilities. So again, incorporating supply, ethics in ethical, factors in supply selection, in specification development, developing code of conduct, audits. These are all things that we do in ethical sourcing to reduce vulnerability. So it depends on how you explain them to reduce the risk in supply chain. Okay. So review the key elements of a published standard to promote ethical sourcing. So a published standard to promote ethical sourcing. Here, just take Ethical Trade Initiative, ETI. So let me, here, Ethical Trade Initiative. Ethical Trade Initiative standard. Let's mention some of them. Social Accountability 8000. And that. E. Environmental Management Standard. ISO 14001. I think HEMAS is not a standard. Okay, so when we talk about standards for promoting ethical sourcing, we are looking at ETI, we are looking at ILO standards. These are core principles of ILO. Then social accountability 8,000. So please master the core elements. So ETI, I'll send them to you. I think you should have them in the ETI, the book. ILO and social accountability 8,000. Yes. I know you are tired. It's not easy, but we are almost done. Explain for.
How many more questions?
But then, oh, we have only, I think, 5 questions more.
Okay.
10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Then explain 4 main areas of ethical labor practice that an organization should consider when it enters into a contract with a supplier. And here, you can just use ETI, the 4 main areas of ethical labor practice. You see here, you've been restricted to workers' rights, labor practice. So that is where ETI base code comes in. So freedom of employment or employment should be freely chosen. Freedom to join any association. No use of child labor. Workers must not work excessively or avoid excessive working hours. We can also talk of no discrimination. No harsh and inhumane treatment at the workplace in the form of trying to discipline a worker for wrongdoing. So these are all labor practices, ensuring that workers work under safe and hygienic working conditions. So these are the main areas. So you can use ETI's base code. And I will send you all the relevant documents that you need to help you prepare. ETI's base code. Yes, ETI's base code. Will help. And please, chapter 4. As for chapter 4, any question you get there, you should kill it. I beg you. Then 11, outline 3 remedial actions that an organization might take when breaches of ethical practice have occurred within its supply chain. So what can you do when an audit report says that an organization or a supplier has breached your unethical practice, okay, or breached an ethical standard within the supply chain? One is that you can use you can do supply development. These are the remedial actions. So supply development is one, and here is support, providing support. You can be in the form of training, it can be in the form of education. And if the supplier is using children, for example, and audit findings reveals that the supplier used children, it will probably be because you are not paying the right price. So as part of supply development, you may want to pay a higher price to enable the suppliers to stop using children so that they can pay the elderly when they employ them. So it's all part of supply development. It can be training, it can be education, and all that. Okay, but we wouldn't go into the nitty-gritties. In level 5, when we do ethical procurement, we'll go into the details. Then supply development. So you can do corrective. Yes, you can use corrective action plan a corrective action plan always follows an audit. So after the audit, the buyer and the supplier and the auditor sit down and develop a corrective action plan. And the corrective action plan includes the identified area of infringement. So if it is child labor, maybe child labor, we discover that the supplier uses children and it's an infringement or it's a breach of a provision within the Labor Act, maybe Section 555. Okay, it has been identified as a breach. Then there is no fire extinguisher, or workers were working in a dusty environment without any face masks on. So that is also a breach of workers' rights or labor rights. So we identify all this. Then we determine the remedial action to be taken. So what should be done? Okay, we have to provide face masks. But within which period should the face masks be provided? Face masks isn't that expensive. So that one can take a day. Maybe by Monday, Sebastian must make sure face masks is available for every worker. So the one responsible for the corrective action plan or implementing the corrective action plan will also be named. So you can say, okay, when it comes to face masks, Sebastian. When it comes to ensuring that workers are not used, or children are not used. Children are not used. Joshua, you have to ensure that children are not used in the organization from this time forward. So the responsibilities are also made clear. Then how the cost of the remedial action will be shared would also be agreed as part of the corrective action plan. So it will be 50-50. The buyer bears 50%, the suppliers also bears 50%, or 60-40, depending on the parties involved. They have to agree. Then there is also an element where the parties will have to know how the corrective action plan will be monitored. So as a buying organization, we will be monitoring you. You weren't paying living wages. Now you have to pay living wages. So at the end of the month, we will call any of your workers and find out if they have really seen an improvement in their salary. So it's so clear how the progress will be monitored. Now, also, if there are any additional support that the supplier may require of the buyer, it will also be made known under the corrective action plan. Then there is continuous improvement. We can use continuous improvement mechanism. Yes, the continuous improvement mechanisms or approach requires that you attach bonuses to key performance indicators or incentives to key performance indicators, so that if these suppliers are able to achieve them, there is an incentive they get. And we can do this by also using the bar approach, like the high jump. If you are able to skip the first bar, then the bar is lifted to the next level. So they keep lifting the bar. If you are able to skip the first bar, you are rewarded and the bar is lifted to the next level. If you're able to skip it, you are also rewarded. So you can have this mechanism, continuous improvement system for the suppliers in all the areas. Ethical, yes, we are talking about ethical improvement. So you can help them to do that, to improve, till they are able to get to the most desirable level of attainment. So that is continuous improvement. Then now look at question 12. Explain and justify the importance of monitoring supply sustainability performance after the contract has been awarded. So why is it important to monitor supply sustainability performance? It helps us reduce reputational risk. We need to monitor. And, monitoring also enables us to identify risk and manage them effectively. Apart from avoiding risk, we can identify them easily and be able to manage them effectively. That is what monitoring. You can use these softwares to do the monitoring. Cognitive supply chain, so 360 supply chain. Yes. So monitoring is very important. Very, very important. Then we can evaluate why a procurement professional should select a supplier who promotes ethical and responsible sourcing over one who does not. These ones, let me allow you to talk. I know you are tired, but question 13. Hello, Joshua. Oh, you've been silent for a while. So, kindly say something. Yes, evaluate why a procurement professional.
So sorry, in this case, do you define sustainability?
Yes. Yes. You have to. That's question 12. You have to define sustainability and talk about sustainability performance. What are we talking about? Yes, we are looking at ethics. We are looking at the environment, the triple bottom line. Environmental sustainability and ethical or social sustainability. Okay, so question 13. Evaluate why a procurement professional.
So, Chris, did you ask me a question?
Yes, question. I want you to answer question 13. Yes, question 13. Yes.
Or 12.
13.
Okay, sorry. Let me.
Says evaluate why a procurement professional should select a supplier who promotes ethical and responsible sourcing over one who does not.
Okay. Evaluate the word evaluate. Okay.
Yes.
It's more like compare.
Comparing the benefits of using.
So it's more like
using a supplier who promotes ethical and responsible sourcing.
Okay. The reason why I would select a supplier that promotes ethical and responsible sourcing is as to prevent any kind of unethical activities that can go on to doing any sourcing or any tender process that can end up corrupting. I don't know. The English has finished.
Don't worry. You just slow them up.
So I think basically, let's make sure that one, you get it prevents fraud. It also ensures that you get people who end up providing or executing tasks based on the specification without cutting corners.
Yes, and to support, to add to what you just said, if suppliers are ethical and responsible, it means they are paying living wages. And if they are paying living wages, their workers will be motivated to give up their best. So if they are giving up their best, it means supplies will never delay. You will always get your goods on time. You always get the right quality of input and all that. So, and it goes on and on and on.
It means that they also abide to international regulations.
Yes, regulations. And they are reputable. And reputation is one of the factors you also consider when you are selecting suppliers.
Exactly.
So this is an open question. It's open, and it welcomes any idea, all ideas. Yes, so long as you are able to justify, that factor or that point. Okay, so, of course, suppliers who promote ethical and responsible sourcing will be more desired than those who don't. Then question 14. And you know that those who also promote ethical and responsible sourcing, they are environmentally conscious. So whatever they'll be selling to you will not have a negative impact on the environment.
Exactly.
Your disposal cost will be reduced because reverse logistics is already in place. They have it. Question 14. Outline our last question. Outline the key aspects of ethical and responsible sourcing and assess how these can be managed. Outline the key aspects of ethical and responsible sourcing. And we've mentioned some of the aspects. We've already identified them. Fraud, corruption, bribery, environmental aspects.
Fraud and corruption.
Fraud and what?
Corruption.
Fraud and corruption. Corruption is an umbrella word for it's an umbrella term for anyone who engages in activity
fraud.
Yes, fraud and even bribery. Just that I would say fraud falls under corruption.
Okay.
It falls under corruption. Okay. So fraud, corruption, bribery, human rights issues, conflict of interest, environmental factors. Yes, environmental factors are also part.
But I don't get a question. So it says outline the aspects of the ethical and responsible sourcing. So you have to say that it prevents maybe fraud and maybe prevents maybe environmental pollution and also ensures labor and also ensures other things, right?
Yeah. We are. It's like identifying the key aspects of ethical and responsible sourcing. So when you go to the last chapter.
Okay.
What are the key issues we identify? So on page 190. Page 190.
So therefore, I left my book at work.
You don't worry, I'll mention them for you. It says ethical and responsible sourcing includes understanding the following: bribery, corruption, fraud, human rights, modern slavery, sustainability, environmental issues, equality and diversity and values. So these are the ethical and responsible sourcing areas or the key aspects of ethical and responsible sourcing.
Okay.
And assess how these can be managed. So how do we manage bribery? How do we manage corruption? How do we manage fraud? How do we manage human rights infringement? Modern slavery, sustainability, equality. I hope you get a question. So bribery. There are bribery policies We can use bribery policy. In some organizations, they don't take bribe. Yes.
Do some organizations take bribe?
Oh yeah, yes. Some openly don't, but secretly do.
Interesting.
Yes, openly they don't. They don't accept it. But some do. So some do. Bribery in all forms. Bribery in all forms. Public sector does not allow or infringe on or frowns on bribery. But if you don't pay bribe, you cannot enter the service. You cannot render any service. Can't. Okay, so you can use bribery policies or even gift policy. Gift policy. Gift policies can be used. If you are given a gift exceeding a certain amount, it's considered as bribery. But if it's below a certain amount, you can accept it. You can use this to manage it. And when we talk about fraud, we can cyber fraud. It's also there. You can have experts, or you can build effective firewalls and even do proper due diligence when dealing with anyone online.
Okay.
And then in terms of modern slavery we can child labor and decent based slavery. They are all forms of modern slavery, child trafficking, human trafficking. And what we can do is to get our suppliers to be aware of these things and auditing will help minimize the risk. Auditing will help minimize the risk. And if we get these suppliers to join ETI, because you can't be a member of Ethical Trade Initiative and be engaged in any form of modern slavery. Never. Once they'll be monitoring. Once they get to know, you'll be dismembered. And your reputation will be at stake. They will see you as not being credible anymore. So, Ethical Trade Initiative, you can use that amongst others. Then when we talk about equality, so equality can also be used here. We are looking at the ratio of men and women, ensuring that suppliers do not employ only men in their organization. They balance it with women also, and also ensure that the physically challenged and disadvantaged suppliers or small medium enterprises are also used whenever contracts are awarded to them. At least a percentage should go to small medium enterprises to enable them to. So these are some of the things we can do to ensure diversity and equality. So I think that is it for I hope and pray that you blow this paper. Yes. Please don't go to the exams or having no idea of any question that you receive. At least all the questions that you've covered, you are likely to get, I wouldn't say one, but two or more questions from these set of questions. So kindly master them and prepare adequately. If you have no idea about a particular, I don't think any question will come under ethical and responsible sourcing and you will have no idea. It's not possible. It's not possible. Or whole life asset management and you have no idea. It's not possible. And maybe law and you have no idea of offer, acceptance. It's not possible. So all the chapters You should have a fair idea. So thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. I wish you all the best. And
okay, sure. But I want to ask a question.
Okay.
So all these questions, if I get them, it means that I've passed the exam, right?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, you are adequately prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, adequately
so it doesn't
prepared.
mean that there's no area in the book that
is not captured in the questions or by the questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every area of the book has this has been captured, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll rely on this more.
Yeah.
So thanks very much. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Enjoy your day.
Okay.
I'll share the recording as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.